All right, folks, it's a Friday morning and a lot is going on in the world. We've also got a couple of special guests that'll be sharing their story as well. And of course, we've got Nick Palvedo that'll be coming in and having a discussion around the budget because we do know the government shutdown is one of the things that is happening in the world and all along those lines. One of the pioneers of women in politics just recently passed away. So, Senator Dianne Feinstein died at the age of 90. And a lot of folks, including Andrea Mitchell, was talking about how she was a leading women's senator for generations. So definitely that is one of the things that we are seeing in the news. And of course, a lot of people are talking about the government shutdown, which is imminent as House Republicans have rejected the latest Senate effort. So a lot of people are wondering about that. And the last government shutdown was the longest in more than 40 years. And a lot of people work in the government and there is concern about how this will impact our economy and all along those lines. And definitely in world news, a suicide bombing ripped through two mosques in Pakistan, killing at least 57 people in that part of the world as well. So, like I said, there's a number of things that are happening in the world and in the U.S. as well. So, it looks like it was a suicide bombing that was what was taking place there in Pakistan and all in that kind of way. And the UK's Sycamore Gap tree featured in Robin Hood movie has been chopped down. So it looks like that movie that had an iconic part in the whole entertainment industry and everything has been chopped down. And I'm sure that some of the folks that are preservationists might have been upset about that as well. And definitely in Libya, photos are showing recovery efforts in Libya after that fatal flood took place in that area. And of course, a lot of folks are still talking about the conflict going on in Armenia. And that is definitely something that is going on as more than half of the Nagorno Karabakh population is fleeing after Azerbaijan's takeover of that particular region. And Sweden's prime minister has summoned police and army chiefs as gang violence is surging in that part of the world. So a lot of times people are thinking of gang violence as being something that definitely happens here in the United States, but it hits other parts of the world as well. I believe that was one of the issues that was going around in Nigeria as well. And of course, there are a number of other countries that it is impacted as well. And it looks like Putin is meeting with his top Wagner commander. So definitely that is something that is going on. He is meeting with his former Wagner commander, Archie Trashov. So a lot of people are paying attention to things that are taking place in the war between Russia and Ukraine as well. And then there is we talk about shootings in this part of the world, where they happen in other parts of the world as well. So the Dutch police have arrested a gunman after a deadly hospital shooting. So that is something that was going on. Apparently at the Rotterdam shooting, hospital was warned of the psychotic suspects. So this is something we see quite often here in the United States and in the West, but it definitely is taking place even there in Europe as well. So that is something that we are seeing also. And a populist leader sympathetic to Putin's Russia could be the person that wins over there in one of the other countries as well. So definitely it looks like a part of the world could soon have a pro-Russian leader. So that is what's happening in Slovakia. So it looks like Slovakia may be getting a leader that is actually pro Putin if that particular person that is currently leading wins that election. And in Eswatini, there is an election there as well. That is one of the last absolute monarchs, and they are holding a vote. So the vote in the kingdom where parties are banned. So who knows, maybe this may be changing their political system as well. So definitely that is something that we are seeing. And of course, over there in Canada, a monument honoring a Nazi unit in Canada is under fire after the whole commentary that was going on around Trudeau and others in that particular government as well. So like I said, this is some of the things that we are seeing in the news. We'll get to some other parts of the news as well. By the way, Marco says Philippines will staunchly defend waters against Chinese aggression. And of course, we are definitely seeing the Marcos family back in control of the Philippines, and the Philippines has oftentimes been an ally to the United States and all in that kind of way. So we're definitely seeing that particular case. And let me get to a couple of other U.S. stories stories. Then I'll bring in our guests, and we'll also be hearing about the budget and also hearing other things that go as well. Speaking of the budget, it looks like most national parks will close in the shutdown. So if you were planning to get out this weekend to a national park, and if there is a shutdown imminent, that could be problematic. And maybe you'll be all right this weekend, but it could be problematic in the month of October and all in that way. And a program that saved children care, that saved child care for millions, it looks like, is expiring. So this is something else. I know that Nick oftentimes talks about Medicare and other programs, but it looks like in the area of New York and other parts that this could be problematic because a program that was actually helping a lot of those folks could be coming to an end. So definitely we think about the impact on our society, even to our young people as well. I'm gonna have to find out which of those programs it is as we continue with the discussion and all along those lines. So that's some of the things that we're seeing in the news and all along those ways. Like I said, that's just a few of the items. I'll also bring in my guests and I want to hear their story as well. So definitely we're going to bring in Miss Bamberg, and we've also got Paul Brown as well, and we've got others here that are with us also. So Miss Bamberg and Mr. Brown, I know that it seems to me that y'all have gone through a very traumatic time. I can only imagine what it would be like to have somebody that had passed away and not be able to lay them to rest for a number of years. And it seems like he was also a military veteran and definitely involved in the military as well. So if y'all would like, and I'll start with Miss Bamberg to share a little bit of the story of what y'all have been going through for these last 2.5 years, because it's something like y'all have been going through a tremendous amount. I know that you're based in South Carolina, but the whole situation took place in Ohio. So if you can definitely just share with our listeners a little bit about what took place and how you feel that a lot of parties were at fault, including the coroner and maybe even law enforcement and a number of other people as well. But I'd love to hear the story from your perspective.
Yes, sir, and thank you so much for having us on your show today. My father, Sergeant Paul Brown Jr., he was a Vietnam veteran, Purple Heart, and he was from Barnwell, South Carolina. But the incident happened in Cincinnati, Ohio. My father, Paul Brown Jr., was 69 years old. He was living in Cincinnati, Ohio for over 10 years. When on May 29th, 2017, we was reaching out to call our father, and it was Memorial Day. So he never answered the phone. So his sister, my aunt, Viola Brown, she decided to call the police department to do a well check on my father. So the police called her back and stated that they had bad news. They found my father dead in the apartment. And without the consent of me and my siblings, the police called the funeral home. And it's a funeral home for cremation to come pick up my father's body. So my aunt reached out to my sister, and my sister notified me. So I decided to call the funeral home to ask them why would they come get my father's body without our consent, because we never gave them any permission. So when I spoke with the director from the beginning, I told him we was coming up to the funeral home. So when we got in Tennessee, I was inside the store, and my daughter, she came in the store and she said, Mom, you have a phone call. It was the director from the funeral home. And he said, I have bad news. You can't see your father. He said a lady called in stating that she was married to him and she didn't want you to see your father. And I said, nope. My father been married to my mom over 30 years and they have a divorce. So we're the kids. We next in line. And by rights, we have right to see my father. And he said, I'll call you back on Friday and I'll let you know if you can see your father. And he hung up the phone in my face. So when he hung up the phone, I was devastated because the only thing I had was his cell number. We never had a location of my father's body. So they took my father's body and I felt that they held him hostage because they didn't have a right to get my father's body. So during this time, being that we was banned from the funeral home, and then we had already reached out to my father's landlord earlier that day. I spoke with him personally, and he told me that my father acts out when he don't take his medication. He plays the music loud and disturbs the neighbors. And I'm like, I want to see my father. I need to get in the apartment to get his information so we can give him a proper burial. And he said, no, you're not going in the apartment. And he said, your father owes me $3,000. And I'm like, why are you being so nasty to me? So with that being said, we was banned from the funeral home and my father's apartment. We decided to still go to Cincinnati, Ohio to get some help from the police. So we drove over 12 hours. We had to sleep in our car because yet we was banned from the apartment. And by law, we're the kids. We were supposed to have access to the apartment. We went to the police department after sleeping in our car, and I went inside and I told them what was going on, that we was banned from the funeral home in my father's apartment. And the officer told us to go wait outside until another officer come out there. The officer came outside and he got on his phone. He went to the side of the building, but we could still see him. Came back over to us. He said, I'm sorry. There's nothing we can do. Your father doesn't live there. And my family, we're crying. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. He lived there over 10 years. So we found out later, the officer who told us that was nothing he can do, he didn't even work for that police department. So he wasn't even supposed to tell us anything. We later found out, to make a long story short, that the funeral home, when they did call us on that Friday, and he told us that we could see the body, we went into the funeral home. At first, he told us that my father was so messed up that we would never recognize him. And I said, nope, we want to still see our father. We went in the back room. My uncle went in first. He was crying. He ran out. So we knew, me and my brother, we knew we had to do what we came to do, and that's fight for justice for our father, because they banned us from everywhere. We went up to the body. My mom was standing on the side of my father's body, and she had on a black coat with white buttons, and tears was coming down her face, because if they would have still been married, the next day would have been their anniversary. They would have been married 50 years. So I looked at my mom and I said, Mom, don't cry. I went over to my father's body, and when I saw his body, he was beaten on the left side of his face, and he had on a hospital gown. And I went around the back of his head, and they done cut the hair out the back of his head, a whole patch of his hair, but you can see the blood draining from his head. So I asked the director of the funeral home, I said, why does my father have on a hospital gown? And he told me that 2 members from his funeral home went and got my father's body. They put him in the back of the van and they washed him up. And I said, what? I said, what about the coroner? He said, the coroner didn't come out. I said, well, who did the time of death? He said, the time of death is when my guys opened the door to get your father's body. And I was like, what? So what I did, when I found out the coroner didn't come out to the scene, we went back to the police department, got the police report, and it had an investigator name on it from the coroner's office. So I reached out to him and I asked, could I come to his office? So at the time, he didn't know we was in the area. When he told me yes, we was there within 30 minutes. So I went inside and I asked him who gave him permission to move my father's body to the funeral home. And he said, I washed my hands of it. I was told it wasn't going to be a funeral. And when I told him, I was told by the director of the funeral home, the coroner never came out. Nobody from the coroner's office came out. He tried to prove to me that he came out. So he said, I got pictures. I said, well, can I have them? So everybody was looking at him. So when he gave me the disc and I looked at the disc, that's when I saw my father's body laying on the floor with pajamas on, with his pants down, his face beaten, his penis cut, his hands in a surrender's position. And I was like, oh my gosh, my father was murdered. So when I found out this information, I reached back out to the funeral home and I told him, I said, where's the clothes that my father died in? He said, they threw the clothes away. And I'm like, you threw the clothes away? So during this here time, when I talked to the funeral home again, and I told him, I said about my father's body to transfer him back to Balmer, South Carolina, he said the coroner won't talk to him. They don't have a doctor to sign off on a death certificate. So by law, he said we couldn't take the body. So we found out after they kept the body and we was trying to get help. We did a YouTube video reaching out for help. This attorney called us stating that he wanted to fight for our civil rights, being that my father was a Vietnam veteran, and he would come down and do the case bono for us. He flew down. To make a long story short, during that time, we didn't know this attorney in the funeral home made a fake death certificate, putting my name on it as the informant. And I never knew a death certificate exists until 2 years later, a year and a half later, when we did a conference call, me and my brother and the attorney. And I said, I don't understand what's going on. I called the courthouse and they say they never heard of you. Who are you? He said, the courthouse is lying and I have the death certificate. And I said, what death certificate? So he sent me the first death certificate, no seal on it, and it was typed. So when I reached out to the funeral home and I said, wait a minute, you have my father's body over a year and a half. I'm just finding out you have a death certificate. And it was a lady answered the phone. And I said, do you have a death certificate for my father? She said, no. And she slammed the phone in my face. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So when about a couple of months later, a new director reached out to me from the funeral home. And I said, sir, do you have a death certificate for my father? He said, yes, we could have been kept your father's body. And I'm like, what? So he emailed me the second death certificate. This one was handwritten, no seal. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So since my father's a Vietnam veteran, I went to the VA personally myself because I'm the administrator over my father. And I went to the VA and this lady told me in Victims Advocate, she said, I'm so sorry, baby. She gave me a third death certificate and it was void. She said the doctor never signed the death certificate. And also the funeral home never had a permit to move your father's body from the apartment. And I'm sitting there like, what? So you telling me my father got 3 different death certificates, no seal on them, and the VA doctor never signed it. So my father don't have a death certificate. So the funeral home got quiet. And I had a dream that my father was being buried. So when I woke up, I called my brother. I said, Paul, let me reach out to the courthouse because something is wrong. The funeral home done got quiet. Everybody done got quiet. So he said, okay. I called the courthouse. And they said, is your name Patricia Brown Bamberg? And I said, yes, sir. He said, we have an information on your father, a court date. The funeral home want the remains of your father's body. And I said, what? And I said, well, I was never served. We was never notified. He said, well, if you can go ahead and send me your email, I can send you the application and we can send you the information. So when I gave him the email, it was only God. He sent me everything that was going on, the whole document. The funeral home has a bill for $62,000, but they said they don't want the money at this time. They want the body. And they also said on the court paperwork that we should have no rights to the body as the kids. But the worst part about it, they lied and said they never ever could get in contact with me when I was speaking with the attorneys from the funeral home from the beginning, and they sent me the second death certificate. So they lied under oath. So being that we had the court date, me and my brother Paul, we showed up for court. They didn't even know we was coming. When we got there, the judge was shaking because everybody, the court was in a small room in the back, the hearing. And so when we got in the courtroom and we studied the laws of Ohio, and I presented everything to the judge, and I told her that by rights, because my father was mentally ill, the coroner was supposed to come out to the scene. She was supposed to get the body. She was supposed to do an autopsy. And I also told the judge that we had 3 fake death certificates, that I was not the informant on that death certificate. The judge was very nasty to us. And as a matter of fact, she told me to stop talking. She wouldn't even let my brother talk. And my brother stood up and said, you're not going to let me talk? My father's a VA veteran. He served the country. So all of a sudden, the doors bust open in the courtroom. So the judge must have mashed the button. It was 2 tall white police officers came in. She looked at us and she said, get them out of here. like we was dogs. So I'm looking like, what? So we was escorted out of the courtroom. We had no time to waste. Me and my brother, we knew when the judge told us, she gave us 7 days to get my father's body. She said when she came back on Tuesday, if the body's not gone, the funeral home can have him. So when we got escorted out, we had no time to argue. The police was smirking. You know, people in the courtroom, they was looking at us because we was escorted out like we was detained. And I'm like, what about our civil rights? This is our father. We didn't even have the right to the hearing, to be served, and know they was having a hearing. Then when we showed up to the courtroom, they threw us out the courtroom.
Ms.
So
Bamberg, just really quickly, just because we have to get to some other news items and everything else as well. But how did you ever get the body? That was one of the things I was going to ask, and there might be some other people that'll be joining us as well. And also, because it sounds like there was also a murder involved. So was the murder ever investigated? Those are the two questions that were coming to my mind automatically.
We called the coroner. My brother called the coroner, and I called the funeral home, and we had to pay $4,000 out of our pocket. The doctor ruled it as homicide. He said the coroner should have came to the scene. They should have tested for poisoning, and the scene was disturbed because the table was broken. My father, and it was suspicious because his pants was down, his penis was cut, his face was beaten. So the doctor ruled it as homicide. So I reached out to the United States attorney, Mr. Ken Parker, and he called me on a conference call with the FBI. It's going on 2 years. They never, ever called me back. I also spoke with the witness who took my father's body out of the apartment. He told me the coroner never came out. Him and the father took my father's body on a Saturday. So when my aunt called that Monday, the police lied. They had already taken my body that Saturday. And the witness told me that they put him in a van. The coroner didn't come out. Nobody had access to the building but him and one officer on a Saturday.
And did y'all ever get a chance to lay your father's body to rest and everything? It sounded like y'all went through a lot for 2.5 years. So did you ever finally get a chance to officially bury him? And is the investigation still ongoing?
We buried my father in 2019, but he's buried without a death certificate. He was never confirmed dead. And I spoke with the FBI, and she told me that having a witness is no reason to open up an investigation. So nothing has been done yet. And I feel my father's murder has been covered up. He was murdered before Mr. George Floyd was, but nobody never knew about it because it was a secret. They tried to hide it.
Wow. Well, I'm going to bring in some of the other folks because I'm sure that they've been hearing this story and might have some other questions as well. So I'm going to bring in Lee Newton Rhodes as well as Jatovi and others. I think Nick was here as well. Lee Newton Rhodes is involved as a candidate for president and actually also an accountant as well. And then Jatovi is definitely involved in a lot of things in terms of Durham and esports and a number of other things. And Sasha Starr is over there in Canada, but a former resident of Ukraine and born there in Odessa, which has definitely been under heavy attack and all along those kind of spaces and everything, but currently living in Canada and is a chess master as well. But definitely, and I hadn't heard from Paul, didn't know if Paul had any thoughts about what his sister has been saying also. But Lee, you've heard part of this story. It sounds very tragic and definitely sounds like they have a lot of unanswered questions. I hope Nick can come on because he's definitely the one that just has the legal background and all in that space. But any thoughts or questions as to what Miss Bamberg has been through and all along those lines?
I just want to convey my condolences. I'm sorry for the loss that y'all had, and compounded by the murder that's not being investigated. I'm so sorry for what y'all are going through.
Thank you, sir.
Definitely sorry for that and everything. Paul, how was it when you found out about this and everything? Because like I said, I know that your sister's been speaking a lot, but I want to hear some of what your thoughts were about what was going on and who you hold accountable. Because it sounds like your sister is finding a lot of people that she would like to hold accountable, everybody from the coroner to some of the law enforcement to a number of others involved as well. So I just wonder some of your thoughts.
Yes, sir. like my sister said earlier, we know that the different individuals that played a part in my father's murder, they covered it up. And from the beginning, when we got there, they barred us from the apartment, which is I'm an elder. I did the funeral myself. They barred us from the apartment, and when we got the pictures from the police department, they standing in the apartment looking at the body, reading the ID, and they say he don't live there. And yet, when they bust the door open to go check on him, the door in the pictures are underneath his feet. So you can't have a door up under the door that you bust down underneath the feet with the guitar if he already did when you come in the apartment. So from the beginning, we knew it was lies, and all we did, we came just to bury him and find out what was going on. When we got there, we found out that it was foul play. We found out that they were covering it up. The things that are simple things that any individual would ask for, we were denied it. And when we were denied it, like she said, the officer came out to say he didn't live there. And we get the pictures, and they're looking at the ID standing over the body, and the picture is jet black. And when we lighten it up, we see the body on the floor, and they reading the ID in the apartment that they say he don't live there. That got their identification on it. So then when we get the pictures, we see he beaten, like my sister said earlier, the left side of his head is swollen, and he's in a surrender position, his penis cut. And according to their laws, when you come on the scene, if it's a suspicious, they were supposed to call the coroner. They weren't even supposed to identify him. It's supposed to be a forensic investigation. He's a Vietnam veteran. They come on the scene, his penis cut, he's in a surrender position, and they saying he died medical. They're using the law to break the law. They're using the law to cover themselves. Any officer that know, I got a degree in criminal justice, any officer that know when they come on the scene and the scene is disturbed and the incident report got they find the body two different ways on the incident report, that an investigation got to take place because they know he's mental. It said in the incident report he's mental. Any mental individual automatically got to have an autopsy done. So the police deterred the situation and said it's medical. The investigator said he was told it wasn't going to be a funeral. He had not even talked to the family. Then he lied. He'd been to the VA, and the VA was around the block. We went to the VA. The VA said they don't even know Dad had been dead. So every time we got to a roadblock, there was another lie, and there was another situation. Then we come back home, and the attorney flies down and pretend to help us. We go on the Nathan Ivey show, and he gets on the show and saying that he go fight for our right, that he believe foul play. And come to find out, a year later, he produces a death certificate of our medical records that we gave him. And then he said, well, I hate y'all gonna be sorry that we got a death certificate. My sister say a death certificate, you ain't gonna had a doctor to sign it. When you in the VA and you a soldier, you got 24 to 48 hours to come sign that death certificate, and they got to be under the doctor's care, or either that doctor got to have been caring for him for the last year. They hadn't seen my daddy in a year and a half, so we know the doctor didn't sign it. When we got to the VA, like I said, they acknowledged they didn't even know he was dead. So the investigator had already lied. He already got permission for somebody else saying it ain't gonna be a funeral. He ain't even talk to us. And the police officers, they deterred the situation, and they call themselves ruling the body as being medical, and they're not a doctor. They don't have a degree, and they turned the scene and sent the body to the funeral home. They put Schaefer's and Busby on the report, but it was actually Spring Grove. So they got Schaefer's and Busby on the report with no identification where they are or where we can find the body. And then they called to the funeral home after my aunt had called them for a wellness check. So we called first, and they pretended like they was calling us back. But then 30, 45 minutes, they done sent the body to the funeral home without our permission, not giving us a chance to decide where the body go, what actually happened, refusing an investigation when an investigation would easily prove what happened, the body cams, the phone, the cell records. We can find exactly who was in the apartment or what happened. Simple things that could be done that everybody avoiding, and then they're using time as a weapon. They're using the time statute of limitation not to address the situation. When you know if you don't address the situation, you don't have to deal with the situation, so you walk away with a murder. And then you say he had nothing, and the stuff in the picture shows that the guitar, the amplifier, the flat screen TV, all that stuff gone. Then they barred us from the apartment. So every situation we get to, we find a roadblock. Then they take us to court without notifying us, and they take us to court on a rule saying that we got to notify them within 2 days when they notify us that he has been passed. But they talked to us the same day, and the lawyers took it and wrote the document up and took it to the court without notifying us. Like my sister said, she dreamed it, and she called up there, and they sent the documents by mistake, and we showed up in the court, and the judge shaking, and she won't even give us a chance to talk. But my sister from the beginning stated that he was mental, and according to their laws, if you mental, an autopsy was automatically supposed to be done. Because
yeah, Paul, just really quickly, and everything that definitely got the point and all along those lines. But one thing that I was curious about is you made the parallel. Well, a couple of things were crossing my mind, and I don't know if Jacoby's got some thoughts as well. But you mentioned the fact that he had some mental issues and all along those lines. And I do think that sometimes our veterans aren't treated well enough in that kind of space and all along those lines. So even before he passed away and had this horrible situation, a possible murder and all going on, did you feel the VA was doing enough for him in that aspect of taking care of some of the things that were taking place when he was coming back from Vietnam? That was one of the questions that I was curious about, and all along those lines. And then I had another one as well. But did you feel that he was getting enough care in terms of even dealing with some of those mental issues?
No, he was not getting, his care was not addressed. He went to Vietnam. He was a soldier in Vietnam, and ever since 1980, he was said he had grandeur, where he would say he Black Jesus, and he different parts of the Trinity. But he still functioned all through his life, even though everybody knew he was like that. But he was admitted in the VA before all this took place that February of that year. He was telling them he could not take care of himself. He could not take his medication. So they was giving him medication that he could not even control. Then they sent him home to that apartment, and he had PTSD. So they used the fact that he had gotten older and he couldn't take care of himself no more. They allowed people to take advantage of him in his old age.
Well, and George, Paul, just really quickly, you mentioned both you and your sister, but particularly your sister, that you felt it was similar to George Floyd even before George Floyd. So what do you think that the police were involved also in the murder itself? Is that something that y'all are thinking? Because definitely George Floyd, there was some abuse going on with the police force. So are y'all thinking that the police were directly involved in what was going on?
We're saying that the police deterred the situation from the beginning. When they came on the scene, when they saw that body beaten, and they see his penis down, his pants down, his penis cut, and his buttocks showing, they should have called the coroner right then. They know they got a sworn off to do the will of the law, and the law of Ohio stated if they came on the scene that if they saw it was suspicious, they were supposed to stop everything, tape everything, so the crime scene don't be tampered with. So then they can have an investigation to show what could have took place in that apartment. But they deterred the situation, showing up on the scene. And then when they get on the scene, they got 3 different incidents how they find him. One find him by the couch, pants down, a buttock showing. The other one find him in the middle of the hall. And then the person that's looking in the door, when the officer got to the door, he said he could see him in the middle, but said they had to bust the door down to get to him. So they deterred the situation. They proved that they were the first one on the scene. But when the witness showed up last year, he proved that none of them was on the scene. He said he got to the apartment, was just him and the officer there. And wasn't nobody, the landlord, but in the picture, everybody on the scene has clothes, don't have officer uniforms on. So everybody around the body don't even have an officer uniform on. But so I say the police, if they the first one in charge, they didn't follow the chain of command. They broke all the laws and the color of laws. They added everybody in to deter it from even coming to force. So everybody start covering for everybody. The conspiracy began, but it started from the police, when they determined to see from the beginning.
Well,
and I agree. I agree with that in most definitely the police. Because if you come on the scene on the police report, the police said they knocked the door down. The problem with that, if piece of the door is up under my father's body, he had to been standing up. You don't die twice. If they come in there and we have pictures of piece of the door is up under my father's body. Excuse me, is up under my father's body, and the police admit to knocking the door down. The only way the door could be up under my father's body, he had to been standing up.
Yeah, hold on one second.
So
Just really quickly, I hear what you're saying and all, but Nick is actually, I know he does more insurance law, but he definitely does have a legal background, and he might even have some thoughts around that, and maybe even some friends in the legal circles and all along those lines. But Nick, you've heard a little bit about this story, and you definitely want to get to the budget report as well. And I know Sasha's got some other things. Of course, we got Russia, Ukraine, and China show coming up later, but I didn't know if you had any thoughts or if Jacoby had any thoughts as well, even though I think he might have dropped off for a minute and all along those lines, or even Sasha about this entire case and all in that kind of way. So any thoughts on that you've been hearing about what they've been going through? Because it sounds like they've got a very strong case in a number of ways, but a lot of questions to be asked.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like if police could commit malpractice, they did so, because I can tell you when my brother died at home, he was like in his 40s. The first thing that came out was the police, then the coroner. I mean, they have procedures you're supposed to go through to determine whether or not there was foul play, et cetera. Now, in his case, there wasn't. He was 6'5", 480 pounds. And at 480 pounds, he died of a heart attack. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. But when you're bringing the facts that you're saying, penis cut off, head bashed in, immediately, you know, it sounds to me they just violated their own procedures. You know, you have to treat it as a crime scene, bring in qualified medical professionals, and, you know, rope the place off and do the examination and do DNA testing. But in reality, though, at least the stats I get, I don't do criminal law. So I got to say, wait, this is not my area of specialty. But from what I understand, 40% of all murders in the United States never get caught. And this might be one of them. In other words, something could have happened, and it's going to be extremely difficult to find who the murder was because the way things were handled. But I mean, it does sound to me like foul play was involved for whatever reason. And we just don't know what the reason is, but the procedures weren't followed. And I'm sure they have procedures and they just, you know, didn't follow them. And could there be something going on internally? Yes. Okay. At least that's also been my experience with the legal profession. In other words, could there be some foul play internally? Yes, because I've had that happen to me before in cases I've been involved in. And it really irks you when you see things like this happen, because the proper procedure is you bring the medical doctor, the coroner in, they do their inspection, they do their due diligence, they write up the case, they document the case, and they move on. But it doesn't sound like any of that happened. They shoved it on their table and everybody went home. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely appreciated everything. Definitely spend a lot of time on this, but I definitely appreciate having the time for you to share your story and all along those lines, and definitely want you to stick around, and Jacoby and others may pop on and have additional questions and all along those lines. And we'll definitely be trying to figure out ways that we can get this message out, and even this particular show out to some sources that I know and that other people know. Maybe even Nick might have some folks because he knows more in the legal circle and all along those.
I want to see their video they did on this. That's the thing, because it's an interesting case. And Mark, as soon as you get there, that video, let's get it on the network and let's take a look at it. Okay.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Jacoby's joining and all along those lines. So if you'll bring him up, I think he might have some questions. And I know we've got the whole presentation slightly on the budget as well. But Jacoby, you've been listening to this whole thing, and it definitely sounds like a very tragic thing. And you usually ask some very poignant questions, even though you come from the game.
Enlighten us, Jacoby. It's your opportunity. Here comes the hardball, buddy. Time for you to step to the plate. Okay.
No, I don't really have any. I don't have any hardball or enlightening questions. I mean, it's a very disturbing and sad story of what took place. Just trying to think of ways to help. I mean, what are some things that we could do to help in the process and in the help you?
Yeah. Patricia, what are some of the ways that the community, the public community, and others can help? That's what Jacoby is asking. So what are some of the ways that people that are watching this can help?
We really need at first investigation, press investigation. We need to do another autopsy on my father's body, because during the time they did an autopsy, he was still frozen. Because keep in mind, he was frozen 2 years and 7 months. So being that we just found out last year that my father was never confirmed dead because the witness said the coroner didn't come out, we need to resume the body and do a full autopsy on my father's body. We need to do an investigation and bring everybody in who was in my father's apartment, including the witness, and find out what really happened on Memorial Day. The day my father was supposed to be honored, he was erased.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully some people are listening to this and can help in that cause and all along those lines, because definitely it sounds like that's what y'all need. I know that Steve Rao, one of our regular hosts, is joining. I'm also bringing back in Nick as well, and all in that kind of way. Steve is actually trying to get his computer adjusted over there.
No, I'm in the car, guys. I'm driving back from the station, so I'm just gonna be talking while I drive, if that's okay.
That's perfectly fine and everything.
Kick me out of the studio.
Yeah, Mark, I think we should just make a quick mention of Dianne Feinstein, the passing of her legacy. Maybe we can do a show on her next week.
Yeah, I did mention that, and I was going to reach out to some people that might have been.
Oh yeah, I didn't know. I just found that out. Yeah, she was a legacy. Well, real quickly, folks, I just want to interject real quickly. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm going to be talking if you can't see me. This is Steve Rao, the host. They kicked me out of the PBS studio today because they're doing remodeling, so the room I'm normally in was gone. But we pray for Dianne Feinstein's family. We're going to talk about her next week. And the main thing right now, I know we're going to get back to our guests, is the government shutdown. Looks like we're a few hours away from the government shutting down, and it's so bad that it's come to this. I'm hoping that they can work something out over the weekend, but it's just veteran services, healthcare services, research, disease research, all these things are going to come to a screeching halt. Airline service will continue. There could be delays, and Mark, we'll be talking about monitoring that situation, but just want to throw that out there. And I don't know, I probably am missing other things going on in the world. Today, we talked about the national debt, the federal debt, the government shutdown, and Medicaid expansion, which is now official in North Carolina beginning December 1st, providing 600,000 North Carolinians health care. So I just want to throw that out there. I'm still here for the show, guys. I just driving in my car.
No problem. Appreciate that and everything. Hey, Nick, along those same lines and everything. And like I said, we've still got a few minutes to go. And I know one of the things that you were talking about, and we definitely want people to reach out to the Patricia and to Paul as well to see how the folks can help in this very tragic situation and all along those lines. But I know that just as Steve mentioned, the whole budget, and you have brought a presentation around the budget. So
yeah. I mean, the thing is, I don't know about everybody else on the panel, but after getting all this crazy education, something that was never covered in high school, middle school, college, MBA, JDLM is the national budget. They didn't even show it to us. And this is what the government shutdown is all about. And so for the first time that I know on television, we are going to show the national budget of the United States of America. Now, this is basically a $6 trillion document, $6 trillion document. And you can actually get it on the internet. It's available, but it's never shown by media. It's not shown by Congress. They don't discuss it, but it's a very important document because it actually goes through all the policies of the current administration, aka the sales job. And then after you go through the sales job, you actually get to the meat and potatoes of where all the money is spent. And now it is a long document, so it's going to take you a while to read through that, but you're going to see where your $6 trillion is spent and what the policies of the United States government is relating to it, and frankly, where the cuts can actually be to balance our budget. By the way, this is not a balanced budget. We're going another $2 trillion in debt. Shutting down the government is not the solution. The solution is to get people educated on this budget and read through it and figure out where you can save $2 trillion. And the thing is, there's plenty of room.
Just really quickly, I think Steve had a point as well. Just really quickly, and I think Steve had a point also. But how much of the budget, and this is tying our guest in as well, did you see that was actually addressing law enforcement? Because I know a lot of our presidential candidates are saying that they are law and order candidates and are definitely behind the blue and all along those lines, and how much was addressing Veterans Affairs? Because I know that those are two big budget items that exist in all of our budgets over the last several years. So I was just wondering, as you were reading the budget, I haven't had a chance to read it yet and everything, how much did you see in that, and do you think enough people are paying attention to that? Because I'm thinking that some of these even abuses that Ms. Patricia and Mr. Paul were talking about are things that probably could have been better budgeted and better handled if they had had correct kind of folks in those particular offices.
Well, real quickly, I know that veterans benefit 1.2 million.
Yeah, Steve.
1.2 million active duty troops will be deprived of services. So I don't know what benefits, but yeah, definitely veterans is a major issue. And then guys, I got to ask one question today. I wish I'd had David Walker with me, and it was about the question was about I'm putting it on my console here. The question was about what's the difference between the national debt and the federal debt. I wasn't really prepared for that question, but I was able to figure it out. So the national debt, which I think is about 33 billion, is federal, state, and local government debt. But the federal debt is what the federal government owes. And I was right. It's about 1.52 trillion. I guess I'm right, Nick, right? 2 trillion. And that's what the federal government owes. But at the end of the day, the question that I had, which I found hard to answer, was, well, can we continue to afford to have shutdowns? And my thing is that we can, in the short term, play a good short game and keep paying off the debt. Raise the debt ceiling, but eventually, all we're doing is we're reducing the social safety net, hitting working families by cutting services, but also stifling innovation because you instead we're spending 1.8 billion on interest payments a year. 1.8 billion, but imagine if that money went into our government to actually help people.
Well, we're spending.
I hope I answered the question right, but
Steve, we're spending more than that on the national debt. Interest on the national debt is 1/3. It's basically the number 3 budget item goes to just pay interest on a debt. In other words, nobody benefits from it. But we haven't even, the debt is like 33 trillion. The deficit is what we're continually spending and going the hole is about 1.5 to 2 trillion.
Yeah, 1.5 trillion. The federal debt, yes.
Yeah, right. Balancing the budget should be the first step. Okay, and there's only two ways to do it. It's not popular. You're going to have to decrease services and increase taxes. You have to tell the American public that things aren't going to be better. But if you want them better for your children and your grandchildren, you're going to have to balance your bloody checkbook. And we haven't done that yet. And this budget, by the way, doesn't do it either. And I look through that, I'm going, you know what? The American public should be aware of the budget. The American public should have a say-so on some of the spending that takes place. And the American public needs to know about the taxes that they need to shell out extra to balance this stupid thing.
So my number was right.
Yeah. Instead, Steve, no one ever shows the national budget.
Nick, just out of curiosity and to keep our guests still engaged as well, I was just wondering.
Sorry.
Paul kind of alluded to it earlier, even in their case and everything, because it sounds like Paul the third has had some background in terms of learning some of this stuff, maybe when he was in, and I'm not sure if you were in the military or in your school, but I was just wondering, even some of the stuff that y'all are finding that y'all need to know in terms of your constitutional rights and even some of the things that Nick is talking about, how much of that did you feel that y'all are learning on the job training, for lack of a better term, because y'all are not attorneys and y'all are not in that, but y'all are having to learn a lot of this as you are going through what y'all are going through. So how much of this do you feel you were prepared for from your own education background? And I don't know your all's education and work backgrounds, but how much do you feel that y'all were prepared, or is this stuff that y'all are just now learning that is, whether it's even some of the legal rights that you have that you wish that you had learned when you were in school?
Well, I've served in the military myself. I'm retired. I did my 8 years and I got out and I got a degree in criminal justice, associates and bachelor. And I worked at the federal prison, retired from the federal prison, and I'm retired from the state prison. But when I went up there, I found out the people that's supposed to be protecting are the ones that's causing the problem. They are the ones that putting up all the smoke and mirrors. They are the ones doing things. So I found myself in a position where people that's supposed to do what I do, support and do the right thing, they the ones hiding the things. They the ones covering everything. So I find myself my rights being taken, the average individual rights to be notified, due process before you can go to have proper representation for something so important as our father's body has been taken. Different things that the system had come together, and now they hiding everything, even from the part of the health department, giving us a death certificate that they know is not even legal, that not even representation. But we ain't talking about what we think. We talking about what we can prove. We talking about what we already know just by what they giving us. And like I said, the pictures that we showed were from the coroner's office. We didn't produce these pictures. They gave us these pictures. But when they did what they did, they never looked at it. They never thought about it. They figured nobody wasn't coming. So the system that's supposed to be protecting is using the laws to cover the laws. And like I said, my sister worked for the sheriff department before. My other sister was an officer at the guard shack for years. So his children were raised the right way. And we find ourselves in a position where our father, which is a Vietnam veteran, PTSD, and different things that happen after the war that make you different, that people take advantage of it, but it's supposed to be the people protected. And the people that stand they for us, they holding that badge or wearing that uniform, are the ones covering it and using it and having Jim Crow scenes take place behind the scenes and using their badge to cover it.
Wow. Hey, Patricia, just really quickly, one of the things we talk about on this show and everything, and it was kind of alluded to even in some of this conversation, is values. And even your brother kind of mentioned it and everything. So I was just wondering, how much do you think that we as a society are doing to deal with the values? And do you feel that values are being taught enough? Because I know that's something that Lee Newton Rose talks about a lot and everything. Do you feel that that has played a part even in your own case where maybe some people don't have as strong of values as they should in the society? But I was just wondering your thoughts around whether we are teaching enough around values.
No, we're not teaching enough in values of the simple thing of giving us our property out of my father's apartment, his property, because we're the children, and we're next in line. So the landlord didn't value us as the children. He didn't think enough of us. And a lot of times when people do that, when they know they've been doing wrong and they don't want to go to jail, and they just don't care. The world, society, they don't care. It used to be you could go to the police department and get help. And that's the first thing we did, because we thought, okay, we're here now. We're going to get help. The police, they supposed to protect us. And all of this falls up under the color of law. If anybody work for any type of government, they're supposed to serve and protect the citizens. They're supposed to value the citizens. But when they break that law for their own personal use, they broken the color of law. And that's what's going on. It used to be in society, people in law enforcement, including the fire department, which on the incident report, they say the fire department, the guy confirmed my father dead. But when I spoke with him, he didn't even do an incident report, and the investigator didn't do the incident report. And these are things that fall up under the value, because all of these things need to be done, but they don't care, because the only thing they're thinking about is living and not going to jail. And so that's why they didn't care about us. They didn't value us. So to answer your question, this society now, because they just think about themselves, they don't value nobody else.
Yeah.
Only thing they want to do is live and make sure they don't get caught and make sure that they with their family. But what about our father? What about us? Suppose it was your daddy that you get the call that your father's dead and your father's body's been taken to the funeral home without your consent, a funeral home for cremation. And on top of that, then they make a fake death certificate with your name on it saying you're the informant. Then the judge step in it, and I'm telling her the death certificate don't even exist. She didn't even value us being in there. She told the officers get us out of there like we was trash. And the main thing, the funeral home didn't value my father's body at all. They treated him like trash, because on the report they said that they had invested in the body. How can you invest in somebody's body like he's trash? Invested. So let me get it straight. You take the body without our consent. You make a fake death certificate telling us no death certificate don't even exist. Then on top of that, you go to court to tell the judge a lie that you're not talking to us, when in fact, I talked to you the same day. Then on top of that, you tell the judge the kids don't have the rights to remains of the body, and you have a funeral home bill $62,000. They didn't value us because the only thing they're thinking about is themselves and money. Money is the root of all evil.
Paul, just really quickly, and I think that Toby had a quick question too. We're going to wind down, but how much were you even prepared for the financial costs? Because I think a lot of times, and I know that's something that Nick talks about, people are not even prepared for how much a funeral costs. Because some of those figures, people will hear that and they'll be like, I don't even know that I could afford it, and all along those lines. So how much were y'all even prepared for the cost of the funeral existence? With y'all already have a wheel and these things that should be planned in place already, and were you prepared for those kind of costs, or are you still suffering and dealing with those costs?
We were not prepared for it. We did not expect this, and come to think of it, we still owe on the funeral. But we did what we could. We didn't have anything when it happened, but when it happened to your father, you ain't got no other choice. Who gonna go and see what's going on? And then we go up there with no money, got to take the whole family. Like I said, no place to stay, no money, don't know nobody in a city we never been to. And we find ourselves walking on faith, knowing that only God can move the mountain. Only God can do what needs to be done. But we trust that He gonna make a way out of no way. So when we got there, things that we need to prove what was happening, they were giving it to us without even knowing it. So you never prepare for something that happens, but in spite of being prepared, you know God gonna make a way. And when justice come forth, and the light shine and the covers come off, and the true story gonna be told about what happened, who did it, and how they did it. We done went to the FBI. We done went to the Attorney General. We done went to all the agencies, and everybody we go to, they ain't doing anything. They're not doing anything. They treat it like it don't exist. We come from a poor family with nothing. I'm talking about not even having a car starting out. Our father goes to the military and becomes a soldier, and become an outstanding citizen fighting for his country. And then in his latter age, they take his life in his own apartment. And then the cost is everything that he could have done, he cannot do anymore. His mother dies after that. He lost a brother the next month. The month before that happened, he had just lost a brother. Now he done lost 2 more sisters and brothers. And we still had not had an investigation or anybody address the situation that is in plain sight. But the near sight is you don't want to turn your brother or your sister in, so you cover them. So everybody caught up in the pot. So it's a conspiracy that had never been caught before. And God made it where He gave us all the information to prove what actually happened. But the investigation got to take place in order for it to come forth. Simple things. Cameras, body cam, phone records. They approve everybody in the department. They approve what time it happened, and they approve every situation. The normal stuff that can be done is being neglected. And they thought because we had no money, they didn't pay us any attention. When we got in the courtroom, the judge addressed us to see where our financial situation was before she even made her ruling. She asked, did we have any money? Did we have a funeral home? Why was the body there? She asked the question and she won't let us answer. Then after she found out we broke, then she said, well, I'll give y'all 7 days. If y'all don't move the body in 7 days, I'm going to give it to the people next Tuesday. Now, 7 days and the week ain't going to fall between them 7 days. And she done assess us, know that we ain't got no money. So she think it's impossible. So it's like a slap in the face. It's sarcastic. When she's saying it, she already know they can't get it.
Yeah. Sasha, Toby, Sasha.
I'm very sorry for your loss. And for last almost an hour, we heard a lot about what's really happening. Looks like it's a premeditated murder. But please look at the bigger picture. You know that Republican Party of the United States has been taken over completely by Donald Trump. Donald Trump is openly threatening the witnesses, the judges, the prosecutors all over the country in all states. Finally, he's threatening the chief of staff, the former chief of staff, which just until 2 days ago, he was 4-star general Mark Milley. He is threatening him. Do you know that certain people, like even Mitt Romney at one point, he had to look personal bodyguards paying $5,000 a day. Not a lot of people can afford that. That's what's happening in a country. There is no more justice system working. Now the threats, the TikTok and other social media, that's a name of the game today. This is a society where the United States going into, especially if Donald Trump will take power for another 4 years. There will be no more democracy in the United States. It will become a fascist country. It's already going there and it's on its way. And please consider that, continue your fight, consider overall big picture. Thank you. We have to start the show of Ukraine.
Yeah, get ready to start the Ukraine-Russia show and all of that. So you'll get ready to jump over there, and everybody else will. I think Nick may already be over there and all along those lines. But definitely, just really quickly, I think, Jacoby, you had a quick point you want to make, and do make it quick. And then I wanted to hear from them and how they can be reached just really quickly as well. But Sasha, if you go over there, Nick should already be there.
Thank you.
So in a sense, I want to, again, it's a very sad situation. And know that you're not battling alone. And especially now that we have heard the story and had the opportunity to hear the story, that brings us to a point where we're educated in understanding and trying to empathize and work with you to help this situation come to bring closure for you, because I think that's what it sounds like, could help. To figure out what happened, get to the bottom of the investigation, make sure that those individuals are prosecuted and held accountable. So that helps us empathize and understand and want to help. To not go the route that Sasha just did, but Nick and Steve came in and tried to talk about the budget and all the other things. I think you guys being here helps me push back against what both Nick and Steve were talking about. The problem that we have, with the budget, if everybody becomes so educated in the budget, the way our world is right now, and this is the battle that you guys are having, is that judge came in and already said that you guys ain't got no money, so y'all don't get no help. We have a ton of people out there like that right now, and it is sad. So if everybody becomes so educated on the budget, that's just throwing numbers at people. That's not throwing people and their problems and and the context that goes with those individuals that need help and the reasons certain things are in the budget. Yeah, there are things that can be taken out, but there are things that need to be in there to help individuals like you guys and push forward. But we get so tied up in just hearing numbers and forgetting about, hey, what do those numbers mean? What do those numbers affect? Just taking away something. For example, yay, people are cheering on the shutdown. Like how Steve talked about, well, we can deal with a short-term shutdown. No, we can't. Just like what you guys had to deal with, you didn't expect your father to be gone on that day. Well, there's an average of 8,000 people that die a day. In a short-term closure, it doesn't stop. It's not like people don't stop dying. So now those individuals that are dealing with Medicare and Medicaid don't have the opportunity to go and have that help because what? The shutdown is happening. But it's a short-term shutdown. No, we have lost empathy and we have lost that understanding and that help for one another. We're so focused on this number and this dollar that, hey, forget what that number and that dollar pays for. It's that number and the dollar. We can cut it out. We have to get over that. We always talk about how many people are lose their paychecks because the government shuts down, but we never talk about those individuals that need to go to the hospital, that need that health care, that need the investigators to look at a case, or that needs to fly into another area, but is now held up because air traffic control doesn't have people to help with those flights.
Toby?
So it's just, we lose this empathy, and that's the sad part. But that's the real world thing. This, what your guys are talking about, is the real world, and that's where we need to stay.
Just one question in terms of the shutdown. It's just federal workers, right? It's not state, city, local. Am I correct?
Federal workers help with Medicare and Medicaid.
I'm not disagreeing with you there. I'm just asking for clarification in terms of what it's affecting.
It doesn't matter, but that's my point. When you just say federal workers, you're saying that 3 million.
I'm not belittling federal workers. I'm just trying to understand who's being affected. That's all.
But no, it's more than just those 3 million people that are on the federal dime.
So you're telling me state and city workers also will be shutting down?
You're missing my point, Lee.
You don't understand my question then?
No, I understand your question. You're saying, well, these people won't get paid.
I'm not saying that. I hear your point with federal workers, and I agree with you. And I agree people are going to suffer because of it. I'm on board with that. I'm just asking for clarification in terms of private industry, city workers, state workers, who's being affected in terms of paychecks and shutdown.
Lee, that's what I'm trying to get across. Everybody is being affected.
Do you think state and city workers also will be shut down?
Lee, just because I'm saying a federal worker doesn't get paid, do you know that federal worker could be at the air traffic controller? So now, for example, if Patricia and Paul aren't living in the same place, that means that Paul can't get there at the time. So that means those who are affected. So when you're just saying, well, the federal workers, no, more than just the federal workers are affected.
And people who rely on the federal workers, I get all that.
But Lee, hold on a second. Lee, hold on 1 second.
I think Joey understands my question. Maybe I'm wrong. Go on, Mark.
Lee, one of the things I was going to say is that, to your point, a lot of those federal things are in various states and everything. Like I said, one of the things that'll be shut down is a lighter note and everything. But let's just take the national parks. There are a number of national parks that are here in North Carolina and all along those lines. So those are people that will be impacted here in North Carolina by what goes on, because you're talking about the entire parks are going to be shut down, the entire museums. And some of these museums, there are a number of museums that are have federal connections that are right here in North Carolina. Those museums are going to be shut down and everything.
So when we start to pigeonhole it, and this is why I mean, I get your point of that saying, well, specifically, this is the same thing I'm saying.
You're saying there's going to be Mark is saying there's going to be an overflow, which I'm just asking for clarification. I just want to understand.
Yes, federal workers will be told they cannot go to work. Those people that rely on the federal workers are now going to struggle. Those when we try and pigeonhole it to one individual or one group of people, that's when we get into a problem. We get into in a crime, and this is talking about the bystander mentality. In a crime, if you have two people get into a fight, it's not just those two people that are affected. It's not. You have everybody that sees that fight. For example, with Patricia and Paul, their father was murdered. They weren't. They're affected. They're
100%
affected.
And
everybody around their friends are affected. So
I get all that. But if the federal workers are going to be shut down, I get that. The parks will be shut down. The federal parks will be shut down. But the city services such as sanitation will still be going on.
Problems with various services that home loans. Do you know all home loans are federally backed? So now you're talking about having struggles getting a home loan. So if you're supposed to close today, guess what? You're not going to be able to. So you might have closed out on your apartment where your apartment lease comes up at the end of this month. You didn't renew because you were closing at the end of this month. Guess what? You're homeless now.
Mark, we should do a whole show on this probably next week because I hear Toby's point.
Like I said, I mean, the budget and the whole thing, we can definitely have a show around
Maybe
that.
with Mark, we should do it on Monday.
Folks that are budget oriented and all along those lines, but even the bystander mentality, because the bystander mentality is very real, and even that is something that I'd be interested in here. And maybe we'll have the Patricia and Paul come back on another show at some other time. But there might have even been witnesses that were afraid to come out and testify. I mean, I know it's fiction, and sometimes I watch too much fiction.
Oh, that's real, Mark. It does happen.
Fiction is based on fact, and I remember there was one of the fictional shows I was watching, and the woman, it was actually one of the SUVs, the woman was literally raped on the subway. And that while that might sound like fiction, those things really happened, because Kitty Genovese was a real case where a number of people saw what was going on, and they just chose to what Jacoby was talking about. They chose not to testify, and I would not be surprised. Like I said,
I didn't pick up the phone.
Like I said, they don't pick up the phone. I mean, like I said, in this particular, and like I said, it was fictional, but the fiction is oftentimes based on reality. This was literally, it happened on the subway as the subway is moving, and nobody was, they were in there like kind of, like out in the zone. They weren't paying attention to something that was happening. And I would not be surprised as the case goes on with Patricia and Paul if there weren't people that saw what happened or heard things that happened, and they were either chose to ignore it or chose not to get involved. Because we know a lot of times when people are living in an apartment and you hear something that's going on, there are those that are bold enough and have empathy to what Jacoby was talking about, that they will care enough to get involved. But there are also a number of people, we would see that with the whole baggy pants syndrome and everything, where some people will not come out and speak against people that are doing that and all along those lines, because they're afraid of what the consequences will be, and all in that space. They're afraid that if they speak, that some person will lash back out at them and everything. I'm sure that Paul, who worked in the prison system, has dealt with that and seen that it comes out of the prison background and everything, but sometimes people are afraid to step in there and have that empathy part.
The old adage, the adage that, is a sad adage that we deal with all the time: snitches get stitches.
Right.
So if that's that bystander mentality, that's a fight against that, is that people fear that if they say something, guess what's going to happen to them?
Right. Very much true and everything. By the way, this was a very powerful, and I do agree with what Jacoby said. People need to hear this story. That's why I was glad when you reached out to me, Patricia, and everything, and told me that you'd be bringing your brother on as well. It is a story that needed to be heard, and I hope that people that are listening to this understand that y'all need the help on a lot of levels, whether it's financial, whether it's investigation, or a number of other things. So I'm hoping, because I do know the shows get re-aired several times as well, that somebody will reach out to help y'all in whatever way. And I think that's what Jacoby was talking about as well. So if you can just tell folks really quickly as we get ready to wind down how y'all can be contacted if folks are interested, and I will go back and find those videos that Nick was asking about and add some of the context and some post report stuff that we'll do in terms of putting up the additional the show and like some additional video footage with it, including the pictures that you sent as well. But definitely, if you can just tell folks how the two of you can be reached, and hopefully folks are listening that can come to your aid.
Yes, sir. And thank you so much for having us on your show today. You can reach me on my cell at 704-819-0900. That's 704-819-0900.
Okay. And if there's an
my
email,
brother can tell you where you can reach him at also.
Yeah,
my brother Paul.
Yeah.
Cell phone 803-671-4855.
Okay, that sounds good. If folks are not comfortable using the phone, is there an email that folks can reach as well? Because I know some people on both sides of the phone like to prefer to do things by social media as well. So is there either in the social media outlets, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, or whether that is your own personal emails that y'all are willing to share as well, in case folks do not want to reach out to you by phone, but prefer to reach you by email?
Yes, sir. My email is Pat Bamberg, BAMBERG @gmail.com. And my brother, he can give you his email.
Mine is PBMax, MAX417 @gmail.com. Paul Brown Max, PBMax417 @gmail.com.
Well, we're glad that we were able to bring this story to the global community because, like I said, the network is a global network, and hopefully folks are listening and will reach back out to you because I am a definite believer. I know Jacoby considers himself to be somewhat of an empath, as do I as well. So I definitely feel what you were saying, and all along those lines, I hope other people heard this story and are willing to try to find any way that they can to help, because I know sometimes even the small contributions, I think that's sometimes what we don't do enough of. Just to let you know, and this is a aside, but not a total aside. My dad is actually an artist, and one of the pieces he created was called Thoughts and Prayers, because too often, as the reason he created it is because too often we give thoughts and prayers, but we don't do enough action. And that's kind of the reason that he created that particular art piece, because he feels that we oftentimes give a lot of thoughts and prayers when people are going through stuff, whether it is a personal disaster or a national or international disaster, but we don't do enough to reach out to help the people that need the help. So I'm saying that to say that I hope people are listening and that they will not just give you lip service, because I think too often we just give lip service and y'all need the actual help. So I hope people are listening and will actually reach out to you either by telephone or by email. So that would be my final thoughts and my final words in terms of this. But hopefully folks are listening and they will reach out to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. And on that note, we're going to end this particular show, but we do have the Ukraine-Russia show, speaking of another international disaster that is going on, and that show is going on as we're speaking and all along those lines. And of course, we've got other shows coming up on the network as well. And this show will re-air several times also. But in terms of the World Edition, we'll be back next Monday with another episode. Don't think we have a guest schedule on that particular show as of yet, but there may be guests coming in next week. As a matter of fact, I know there are guests coming in next week. And one of them is actually trying to get us to eat better. And all along those lines, they're either next week or the following week. But we're going to get on out of here, and we will definitely be following this story as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.